Hello everyone and welcome to your guide to popular builds and Heroes of the Storm. My name is Saren Death and today we'll be checking out the Butcher's Fresh Meat build. But before we get into any of that, a quick disclaimer. These guides are not written in stone. They are here to point you in the right direction, but ultimately they are a tool to help you learn the hero on your own. Now we've gotten through that, let's take a look at the Butcher. He is a melee assassin from the Diablo universe, and after stalking the depths of Leoric's manor, seeking out the weak to make sandwiches out of, he's moved on to bigger game in the Nexus. His kit gives him great sustained damage, good self-sustain, and a solid long-range engage that can make him a terror on the battlefield. Before we get into his talent build, let's take a look at his skills. His trait is called Fresh Meat. This is a passive that makes nearby enemies drop fresh meat upon death. Minions will drop 1, and heroes will drop 3, which you can pick up to gain 1% bonus attack damage. You can hold up to 25 stacks of meat, which are all lost upon death. This is where a large portion of your damage is going to come from, so making sure you're at maximum stacks will be very important. His Q is called Hamstring. This is a 4-second cooldown line skill shot that slams your axe down, dealing moderate damage and slowing enemies by 50%, which fades over 2 seconds. After using this ability, your next basic attack will hit immediately. This is a great tool that not only does a decent amount of damage, but slows the enemy enough to allow you to body block them and get some more damage out, which could eventually lead to a potential kill. The Butcher's W is called Butcher's Brand. This is a 14-second cooldown targeted ability that does moderate damage to an enemy and causes your basic attacks against them to heal you for 75% of the damage done for 5 seconds, which is doubled versus heroes. This is your sustained ability. This will allow you to stick in team fights longer, take merc camps, and duel enemies very efficiently. His E is called Ruthless Onslaught. This is a 15-second cooldown targeted ability that sends you charging at an enemy from a very long distance away, becoming unstoppable and gaining movement speed. If you reach the target, they'll be stunned for 1 second and take moderate damage. This is a great, if not predictable, gap closer that will allow you to get some nice follow-up damage and, more importantly, move in the way to body block the enemy. Now we've covered his basic abilities, let's take a quick look at his heroics. His first heroic is called Furnace Blast. This is an 80-second cooldown AoE ability that after a 3-second delay, fire explodes around you, dealing massive damage to enemies. This can be cast while using Ruthless Onslaught. While the ability is charging up, the enemy will see metal grating on the ground, so they will know that there is about to be some massive damage coming, and they will try to escape. That said, if this is used in a team fight, the area is large enough that with proper positioning, you will put out some incredible damage that can help secure the team fight. His second heroic is called Lamb to the Slaughter. This is a 90-second cooldown that throws a hitching post on the ground that attaches to the nearest enemy hero after a 1-second delay, dealing heavy damage and causing the enemy to be chained to the post and silenced for 3 seconds. This is a very powerful lockdown tool that spells doom for anyone caught by it. Just remember there's a slight delay and enemies can see the hitching post being thrown down on the ground, so adjust accordingly to ensure you snag someone. Now we've covered his base abilities, let's get into the talents. At level 1, you're going to go with Victuals. This makes it so that every time you collect fresh meat, you're going to heal for 3% of your maximum health. That means that the 1 drop by minions will heal you for 3%, and the 3 drop by heroes will heal you for 9%. This is going to give you massive sustain in the lane and in team fights. At level 4 you have a choice to make. This choice comes down to personal preference, but will also influence a later talent choice. Your first choice is Flail Axe. This increases the length of Hamstring by 40%. This makes it easier to not only hit multiple enemies, but also hit enemies that insist on trying to get away from you, giving you more opportunities to take them down. Your other choice is Unrelenting Pursuit. Now when you actually impact an enemy, the cooldown of Ruthless Onslaught will be reduced by 33%, making it about a 10-second cooldown. This talent will synergize well with a later talent, but baseline it will help you get out more charges, which means more stuns and more engagements. At level 7, you're going to take Abattoir. This increases the maximum number of fresh meat stacks from 25 to 35, and you only lose half your stacks on death. This talent basically means more damage and will synergize very well with later talents. The added benefit of only losing half your stacks on death will help you get back to full stacks much faster, which means you will hopefully be ready to fight at full strength for the next team fight. When it comes to the Butcher's Heroic, either one will work depending on what you're trying to do and what your team needs. If you're looking to prey on the weak and locking down a high value target like a support, then you will go with Lamb to the Slaughter. Nothing is more devastating or terrifying than to be locked in place with the Butcher beating on your face. If your team needs more damage and you aren't looking at singling anyone out, then you will go with Furnace Blast. This heroic puts out a lot of damage, especially when used in team fights, and being able to catch people off guard with it can put a great deal of pressure on the enemy's support. At level 13, you have another choice to make, which comes down to a previous talent choice and personal preference. If you're just looking for some utility and movement speed, then you would go with Crave Flesh. Now, when an enemy is affected by Butcher's Brand, you gain 30% movement speed, allowing you to stick with them, putting out damage, and getting sustain. If you went with Unrelenting Pursuit at level 4, and you're looking at getting even more utility out of Ruthless Onslaught, then you will go with Savage Charge. Now Ruthless Onslaught deals bonus damage to heroes equal to 10% of their maximum health. This can be a great way to initiate a fight or finish off a very low health hero that is trying to escape. At level 16, you're going to go with Blood Frenzy. Now fresh meat stacks will also increase your basic attack speed by 1% per stack. That means with Abattoir, you will attack 35% faster, which means more damage and more sustain during team fights. At level 20, you have a choice to make. The choice comes down to personal preference and which heroic you went with. Your first choice is kind of the default, and that is Nexus Blades. This increases your basic attack damage by 20%, and your basic attacks will slow enemies by 20% for 1 second. This talent just synergizes very well with the rest of your kit, allowing you to keep enemies close while pummeling them for even more damage. If you went with Lamb to the Slaughter and you wanted to get even more utility out of the heroic, then you can go with Slaughterhouse. This makes it so that way Lamb to the Slaughter now chains all enemy heroes in range. This can be very strong for locking down a large portion of the enemy team, silencing them and holding them in place, and is especially potent if your team has some extra heroics to throw on top of it. It is also important to note that the Butcher has access to Bolt of the Storm. While it isn't listed here, if you desperately need an escape, then feel free to pick it up. The Butcher's Fresh Meat build is a strong build that makes him a very good sustained damage dealer, with strong health sustain through Butcher's Brand, and a great long-range engage that makes him a powerful roamer with okay wave clear and 2 powerful heroics. However, he has no escape, so once you're in the fight, it can be very difficult for you to get back out. The loss of fresh meat hurts his damage and sustain, and he is very susceptible to stuns, roots, and slows because he needs to be hitting his branded target to get health back, and most of his abilities are fairly close range. Alright, now we've gone over all of that, let's go over some quick tips for the Butcher. Ruthless Onslaught can be a very predictable ability, not only to your team, but for your enemies. So try and use the charge from a bush or out of line of sight, and if you're charging into an enemy, you can always reactivate the ability at any time during the charge to stop where you are, allowing you to turn around and walk away. This will cost you the cooldown, but at least it isn't your life and your fresh meat stacks. Do not hit an enemy with Hamstring directly after hitting them with Ruthless Onslaught. Remember, there is a 1-second stun upon impact. Instead, wait for them to try and run away, then hit them with the Hamstring. This will give you more time on target, which could result in a kill. Start up Blast Furnace before you charge in with Ruthless Onslaught. This will give the enemy less time to get out of the massive blast when you come crashing in. Try and hit the support with Lamb to the Slaughter. This will lock them down and prevent them from healing their team and themselves, giving you a great opportunity to slice them up and collect their fresh meat. And play the butcher like his fantasy. Stalk your prey, wait for your moment to strike, and once it presents itself, like an enemy support out of position or a ranged assassin off on their own, come screaming out of the shadows and bring them down. You can fight them head on, but that isn't where your strength lies. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you found this guide helpful. If you have any variations or tips for this build, feel free to share them in the comments below. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, I will catch you all later.